So it's a little bit before 7. I've been up less than an hour. It's a little bit different because my schedule's. Well, I would normally wake up and fart around my computer for a little bit and do whatever else, but things are different now. Um, what happened last night was I got my quarterly stomach ache, although it showed up more in my. It showed up more in my head than it did in my stomach, but it, it was the old feeling that I get whenever the weather changes, and indeed there is a nasty cold front coming in, so it's all very easy to understand. So long as you're not a doctor trying to find a mechanism, it's all very easy to understand. So it was around 9. I mean, I sat down, I got everything ready to go. Sitting in my room here, my coffee, and my blankie, it was all good, and then it was just like, ugh, I had to go lie down. So, then it didn't work out, but at least I got everything moved over. It's another last day. Hopefully this is the last day. Today is the 10th. I now have 24 hours to see what I can get done before I head to the show. There's also the weather concern. If it's just brutal tomorrow, I'm not going out. Around -5 is really what I would consider reasonable here. So I can push a little bit one way or the other, but I mean, if it gets much colder than that, then I'm going to have to say, okay, I'll have to catch you local band somewhere else, despite this being a good show to document and a good show to get over the hump. But we'll have to see. I'm not gonna freeze my ass off for you. You're not that important to me. Sorry. Okay, so we got the first part of here. This is talking about something from Ezekiel, and it's presenting this ridiculous argument about how I guess somebody published something ridiculous at some point in time, so they're I mean they're debunking a film, right? So they're focusing on what it was in or TV series or whatever it was. So they're focusing on what was in this Ancient Aliens thing, and they approached the question of what does God's throne look like with these. See this documentary that I'm watching here is trying to argue that what was presented in the TV show was a straw man. But the way I'm looking at it is that they're debunking a straw man. So that they put all of this effort into demonstrating that when Ezekiel said it was a throne, he really meant it was a throne. See, I don't have any reason to question whether it was really a throne, or whether he really perceived it as a throne. If he says it's a throne and he's describing the throne, and it says it in other places in the Bible that the throne is described the same way, to me this is not up for debate, and really doesn't have anything to do with the issue. The issue is, what is it that he's describing? What is this so-called throne? What is sitting on the throne? Could it be that what he's perceiving as a god on the throne is in fact an extraterrestrial? Could it be that the throne that he's describing is in fact in existence, but something to do with an extraterrestrial object? Like, it's like the fact that it's consistent in the Bible is of no, like, that doesn't suggest that it's not of a contact description, right? So I'm not like I'm able to follow what they're presenting as a way to counteract the arguments that are presented in the original series, but the arguments that were presented in the original series seem like it almost seems like was created to do this. It almost seems like they created these ridiculous arguments so that they could be torn down and obscure from the actual questions here, which are not did he really mean to say this? Or if substitute this idea for that. No, let's look at the text. Let's take it at face value, and then let's try to understand that. Let's try to come up with a naturalistic explanation for what it is that he's describing. So I mean, this is at this point, I'm going to watch the rest of it, but I don't really see any point in commenting on it further, because it looks like they're just like they're debunking nonsense with nonsense and missing the entire purpose of the discussion and the entire hypothesis. This has nothing to do with what I would conceive of as an ancient alien hypothesis worth discussing or contemplating. So this is really just it's totally off the entire debate, right? I mean, if something else comes up, I'll mention it, but I don't have much faith in this at this point. See, this is they're doing a section on the flying palaces in Indian mythology, and it's actually a good example of where they are as bad as what they're claiming to debunk. So this is their argument. There were legitimately stories in Indian mythology about flying palaces. That's not disputed. Everybody accepts and acknowledges that. So they mentioned that, and then instead of talking about how there's a story and how maybe it's similar to the stories in Ezekiel about the flying thrones, what they do is they jump to a forgery that explains the physics of how it works, and then they say it can't possibly be true because the physics of how it works comes from a forgery. But the issue at hand is not how this would have worked or how this thing would have flown. It's the fact that it was seen and that there's a parallel across cultures of seeing flying palaces and flying kings and flying devices. How it works is not it's of no importance. So I mean they're really not addressing any of the possible. I mean, unless you think that we have the technology that an advanced civilization would require to come across. I mean, we obviously don't. We're still trying to figure out how to get to the planet that's closest to us. So, to think that we can debunk that is ridiculous. And to suggest that it's impossible because the forgery. This is as ridiculous as what they're trying to debunk is. I just want to rewind just a little bit though to the last part, because the precise thing. I mean, they actually said it at the end of the Ezekiel section. They said this idea is debunked because similar ideas are in other places in the Bible and in other comparative myths. No, that doesn't debunk it. In fact, that reinforces it. That's the whole point, is that it exists in other cultures. And that's what needs to be explained, is why does this exist in all of these different cultures. Even if you can bring it back to a single source, you're still not explaining the question as to why. You're not even again, you're not wrong. You're not addressing the question. So it's. But again, I think that a part of the disconnect is that the individual that made this film is responding to the parts that convinced him. And let's be clear: if you watch a video and you're convinced of ancient aliens by the arguments that they're providing. I won't get into too much detail, but they're not good arguments. And if you find those arguments convincing, then you're probably not the brightest person to begin with. So your debunking is maybe going to miss a few points, right? Because you're operating on this sort of um, it's the difference between the engineer and the mathematician, right? The mathematician wants ideas, theories, abstractions, how to, take ideas and universalize them so that they can be applied to specific things, broader concepts. And the engineer is unable to see the forest for the trees. Everything is a specific detail, and all this sorts of stuff. So if this guy is convinced of this idea by the presentation of concrete, physical processes, then for him, the way to debunk it is to show that those specific examples aren't accurate. When, I mean, the argument was not good in the first place, so the debunking is not really getting anywhere except throwing away arguments that were never very good. And so in the whole process, the actual question never really truly gets addressed. This is particularly frustrating because he puts down the thing that's of interest. It's the same thing with the Ezekiel. He tells you what's interesting, and then instead of exploring it, he completely tosses it aside and gets lost in a diversion instead. The diversion that the film, or sorry, that the TV series seemed to want to create. So, I mean, again, it's certainly curious that there's all of this discussion in Indian mythology about these flying palaces where the elite lived, and you know, even if it wasn't a hoax, discussions about whether we would have the technology to understand that, it's not meaningful. It's not relevant at all, and it's just not getting anywhere. So I'm almost done eating. Actually, I'm less done eating than I thought I was. I still got about half that left. We'll see how far I get into this stuff. Almost 1 o'clock in the morning. 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm not sure if that came out. My mouth is no doubt a little bit flubbly. I have not been speaking much today, or at all, for that matter. It's time to go to bed. Although it's more of a too much coffee moment than anything else. What did I get done? I got up to May 2014, but I could have got a lot more done. There was a bunch of things I still have to do, including building up a part of my record review site. It's quite bright in here. Wow. Just kind of noticing that from sitting. It's dark in the other room. The lighting is dim. That's fine. It's good for the bugs. This was just supposed to be a short update here, just to let you know that this is what's going on. I'm having second thoughts about hitting the show tomorrow. It's going to depend on what I feel like when I get up. But we got a lot of snow today. I don't think it went anywhere. The cold is one thing I can handle that, but well, normally when I go out in snow, I go out in rain boots, and this is a long trek for a long period of time in rain boots. It's not something that's going to work out. Do I have boots? I'm trying to think when I came down here. I don't think I had boots when I came down here. But Yeah, I had those. You know what? I might have a pair in the back. But I would think if I did, they'd be out here. See, what I'm wondering is what the hell happened to my boots. I'm trying to think. I had them. I probably just wore them down. Um, and I think I kind of came to the conclusion at some point that I wouldn't need them anymore, um, which was wrong. I think I should have a pair of boots around somewhere or other. I should look for them. If they're not, well, the only other place they could be is in the back. Um, and if that's the case, I might have a way out. It doesn't make sense to go trudging out in the snow for hours and hours um, without any kind of protection. So um, it's kind of a prerequisite. Um, I know I had a pair of boots for a long time. It's just like, and if I can't figure out what I did with them, then they must be around. Um, the only thing I can think of is that they just see up in Canada. There's salt everywhere, right? So the boots themselves might last, forever, but um, they don't because of the salt. And it's the same thing with the shoes, right? In fact, that's part of the reason why I just buy cheap shoes because I know I'm dealing with salt. Um, I'll have to think about that, but I mean, I'll find out when I wake up in the morning. Right now, I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. So that's it for the day.